the gifts appear on your blissful purpose. Today I would like to explore with you Lesson 11 from the book Lessons in Truth by H. Emily Cady, my experiences from applying this information with respect to spiritual gifts. Lesson 11 is on spiritual gifts. For our previous discussions on this book, I will link in the description to a playlist. She says, it is very natural for the human heart first to set out in search of truth because of the loaves and the fishes. Perhaps it is not too much to say that the majority of people first turn to God because of some weakness, some failure, some almost unbearable want in their lives. This was the case with me. I will share my story in a moment. She says, after having vainly tried in all other ways to overcome or to satisfy the want, they turn in desperation to God. There is in the heart of even the most depraved human being, though they would not for words have others know it, an instinctive feeling that somewhere there is a power that is able to give them just what they want. That if they could only reach that which to their conception is God, they could prevail on God to grant the things desired. This feeling is itself God-given. It is the divine self, though only a spark at the center of the individual's being, suggesting to them the true remedy for all their ills. Especially have people been led to seek truth for the reward, the very work's sake, during the last few years, since they have come to know that God is not only able, but willing to deliver them from all the burdens of their everyday life. So in 2004, I was working in my corporate career. Around that time, I was going through a lot of suffering, a lot of challenges with relationships, a lot of challenges with my work environment. And I remember one day on my way home, I went to my car, which was parked in the parking lot, and someone had slashed 2 of my tires, and I had no idea why. Was it retaliation from something that I did in the past? I have no idea. But it was actually a blessing in disguise. Why do I say that? Well, it turns out I didn't have enough money on my credit card to pay for 2 replacement tires. I had found myself in $50,000 debt as a result of spending money on a whole bunch of things and just putting it on my credit card. And I didn't have enough money on my credit card to pay for 2 new or even used tires. So I had a corporate job. It was paying pretty good, yet I was still in $50,000 debt. So one thing that was very clear to me was I had an inharmonious relationship with money. I also thought that I have to work very hard for money. I had this deep association that money is a result of hard work. And so I was watching this video as part of this training program. And so the person recommended reading Think and Grow Rich. Now the book caught my attention because the book is called Think and Grow Rich, which to me was very applicable to my scenario. But yet I questioned it because how is it that you could think and grow rich? What does that even mean? Because I had a deep association with doing a lot of hard work to make money, yet at the same time, I was in debt. And I was working very hard since I was 15 years old. And there were times where I experienced flow, certainly, although I had this deep association to money and hard work. And so when I read Think and Grow Rich, and this is how it relates to what she shared here, he mentioned that, and I'm paraphrasing, if you believe that money is a result of hard work alone, perish the thought. And I almost didn't want to read the book when he mentioned that because I kind of found it very insulting. Yet, we know now that's identification. Identification was being triggered. So I kept an open mind. And as I was reading this book, he would speak about infinite intelligence. He would speak about the sixth sense. He would speak about the subconscious mind. And he had a way of articulating it that resonated very deeply with me. Many that I've spoken with who have read Think and Grow Rich and credit Think and Grow Rich to their success. Napoleon Hill was a wonderful writer. So what was articulated in the book as infinite intelligence was God. I never heard this term, infinite intelligence, before. And so what Think and Grow Rich taught was to essentially trust that infinite intelligence is going to give you what you desire. All you do is create auto-suggestions from the premise of already having what you desire. And then what happens is that some way, somehow, infinite intelligence is going to give it to you. God is going to do everything to give it to you. God is going to bring people, opportunities, hunches, plans, inspirations are going to be received within. And then you follow these inspired plans, and the results happen. So this was different to me compared to anything that I learned prior. Yet it was exactly what the Bible was saying. And since I grew up Catholic, I was familiar to what he's saying. He's just articulating it differently, I believe, to speak to an audience that perhaps doesn't refer to the Bible. So I, in desperation, turned to God. And by applying the principles in Think and Grow Rich, the results happen. I got out of $50,000 debt. I bought my first house. I moved up in my corporate career. I've had a number of definite chief aims since 2004, and every one of them was manifested by following the principles in the book, which is exactly what she's talking about as well. Now, what she's talking about also is spiritual gifts. So it seems to me that these spiritual gifts, these siddhis, these powers, these abilities, continue to manifest more and more so since 2004, since I started applying this information. Now, I have some friends who had mentioned to me that these siddhis happen on the journey of self-realization. They also mentioned to me to not form an identity around these siddhis, but rather they are what God gives as gifts to fulfill purpose, which ends up being in harmony with everyone. I agree. She says, power to heal is a divine gift. And as such, you are fully justified in seeking it. But God wants to give you infinitely more. Why should you and I restrict the limitless one to the bestowal of a particular gift, unless, indeed, we be so fairly consumed with an inborn desire for it, that we are sure that it is God's highest desire for us? In that case, we shall not have to try to heal. Healing will flow from us wherever we are. Even in a crowd of people, without any effort of our own, the one who needs healing will receive it from us. Healing is truly a branch of the vine, but it is not the only branch. There are many branches, all of which are necessary to the perfect vine, which is seeking through you and me to bear much fruit. What God wants is that we shall grow into such conscious oneness with God, Such realization that God, who is the substance of all good, really abides in us, that ask whatsoever ye will, and it shall be done unto you. So the way I relate to this is one of the things that I noticed is intuition and vivid clarity arose to such a degree that, as I mentioned recently in the videos, I listen exclusively to intuition and the still small voice, and it always works out. I stop listening to the mental chatter, which creates confusion in mind. I listen exclusively to that still small voice, which in the book Abd Allah, Teacher Healer by Walter C. Lanyon, it is referred to as the greatest teacher in the universe, the still small voice. I consult with the still small voice in relation to business decisions, in relation to relationship decisions. These answers that are provided by the still small voice are crystal clear. And these are ideas that I didn't think of before, to seeming challenges that the still small voice provides is many times solutions that I have not read anywhere else. That's because they come from the source, as we discussed. The still small voice arises from the stillness. It is the voice of God. Another thing that I noticed, which I consider as a spiritual gift, is what she's talking about here, is that healing will flow from us. So this started to become more apparent when I got into consulting, but not initially. So from 2009 to 13, I had an IT business, which I built to success. And then in 2013, I transitioned into consulting. I also started this YouTube channel in that year. Now, when I started consulting, I was taking a different approach than I take right now. I did certain things and it produced success in my IT business. And so I was under the assumption that those were the ways that the businesses could replicate to produce success in their business. So essentially, they could just follow my model. And because I was around a number of other businesses while I was building my IT business, I also had access to those models. But what I was thinking was, if they didn't follow those models, let's say I proposed some solutions for them, and they didn't follow those models, that there was something wrong with them, that they're just not listening, or that there's something wrong with them, which is inaccurate thinking, I realized, because as mind was purified throughout the years, I realized that that was illusory. To imagine that kind of separation is illusory. So what ended up changing was, imagine people lovingly mediating God, only seeing the fineness, only seeing God, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, regardless of what they say, regardless of what they do. And so that became my city, because what I noticed was they actually started to produce results. So in the earlier stages, even though you could say I was qualified to consult because I built that business to success, plus I did 10 years in corporate, so I had that experience in corporate to put into my consulting practice. The missing ingredient, we could say, was the manifestation of this city, which naturally showed up. So that's a point that I would like to make, is that I found this was the case with me and many that I've spoken with, is that these cities, such as your ability to heal people in your presence, which to me I articulate on these videos as, be as I am. There's only God is real. God is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Thus people appear that way. I believe that all of these gifts, which even at times I experienced remote viewing, where I was able to see people prior to meeting them and I knew how that interaction was going to go. This all happened naturally. It wasn't something that I was trying to do. It all happened naturally, which again, from my experience and from everybody that I've spoken with about this, these spiritual powers, which we can say transcend common understanding of how things work, happen automatically. She says, you are a vessel for some purpose. So everybody is a vessel for some purpose. She says, if when the time comes, you let go cheerfully, without humiliation or shame or sense of failure, your tense, rigid, mortal grasp on some particular form of manifestation, such as healing, and desire earnestly the greater gifts, whatever they may be in your individual case, you will be simply marvelous in the eyes of them. These works will be done without effort on your part because they will be God, omnipotent, omniscient, manifesting God through you in God's own chosen direction. So this is what I mean by be as I am. To release the illusions of separation. Because when I relate to my journey since 2004, what was happening on the journey and continues to happen is the releasing of identification. The releasing of identification to illusions of separation-based beliefs, which then plays out automatically as these kinds of spiritual gifts, to the point where people say to me, you are so gifted that you have this ability, whatever the ability is. The ability to see patterns of resolution in businesses where they were having challenges before. This seems very natural, very automatic. And I'm not the only one that does it. You do this as well, as you and I are no different. You may do it in different areas. I remember actually meeting wonderful consultants, for example, Jay Abraham. He has this ability to do it. I was very blessed to be around Jay Abraham and the Abraham Group from 2014 to 2018. I did a discussion on Jay's book. I'll link in the description to it. He has an ability to see things that, let's say, people might not see, yet when he points it out, it seems so obvious. I remember him saying one time, the answer is always there. You just might not see it, or something like that. So each of us have these kinds of abilities. I had a friend tell me one time that he actually astral projects out of his body, and they have a conversation in an astral projection form, and then that conversation happens. So there are many ways of describing how these gifts work. If you look around on the internet, for example, there are many videos, and I've watched many of them, where people talk about how these kinds of gifts appear and their ways of describing it. Their articulations are very fascinating. I've spoken about telepathy, thought transmission. There are particular clients that as soon as I think of them, they email me. And I've shared some of these examples in the videos throughout the years. She said, Paul said, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. For to one is given through the Spirit the word of wisdom, and to another the word of knowledge. According to the same Spirit, to another faith, to another gifts of healings, to other workings of miracles, and to another prophecy, and to another discernings of spirits, which I have this one as well. To another divers kinds of tongues, and to another the interpretation of tongues. And so what I find is that all of these gifts end up being in mutual harmony and in contribution to manifesting heaven on earth. And so although we may start the journey, like for example, the way I started the journey, it could be to get out of debt, or to take care of your financial situation, or an ideal relationship, or a physical healing. It seems to me a starting point to understanding and experiencing even more of these gifts, which again, as mentioned, they happen naturally. They happen on the journey to manifesting heaven on earth. She says, turn to the divine presence within yourself. Seek God. Be still before God. Wait upon God quietly, earnestly, but constantly and trustingly for days, weeks, if need be. Let God work in you, and sooner or later you will spring up into a resurrected life of newness and power that you have never dreamed of. So that is the practical way of manifesting these gifts that end up getting used in a way which we can say is a divine play. It's a divine play. Like, I do this service for a person. It may include a manifestation of a particular gift as part of facilitating that service. That person then goes and does another gift for someone else. Then a gift is awakened in the other person, and then they go and do another thing with another person or a community or a group. As a matter of fact, I pinned a comment in one of my videos recently, and then she became, Tessa, a member of my flow-based prosperity group. She shared about experiences of mediating God and imagining those that have been incarcerated lovingly, and they are transforming as a result of applying this. You may have seen the comment. She'll probably comment on this video here because she watches every video. So this is what is being referred to here, and go back to the beginning here. The gifts appear on your blissful purpose. They seem to be related to my definite chief aim. So I mentioned that since 2004, I've always had a definite chief aim. After one has been manifested, there was another one that I set, another one that I set, another one that I set. And on the journey to manifesting these definite chief aims, it could involve some of these gifts appearing. I don't do it. God does it. Because I can of myself do nothing. The Father would then do it the work. What I find as a result of applying this information is, as mentioned earlier, the release of the illusions of the restrictive, limiting beliefs that we could say are generating the appearances to be very stress or force-based. Speaking of which, when it comes to money not being a result of hard work anymore, having perished that thought, as Napoleon Hill talked about it in Think and Grow Rich, I notice that it's easier for me to spot opportunities and also remain in my flow, which is why I always say for the entrepreneur, you can manifest your entrepreneurial success in a stress-based, frustrating way, or in a joyous, flow-based way, which can include some of these cities, like, for example, your ability to predict certain outcomes, the still small voice arising, providing vivid clarity. And also, I find this as well. Sometimes you automatically end up in particular spots where there are opportunities. It happens naturally. And why is that the case is, as she says here, "Oh, do not let us longer fear our God, who is all good." So we see here, a harmonious relationship with God, the sure foundation from which everything that is good arises from is God, as she said. Do not let us longer fear our God, who is all good, and who longs only to make us each one a giant instead of a pygmy. What we all need to do above everything else is to cultivate the acquaintance or consciousness of spirit within ourselves. We must take our attention off results and seek to live the life. Results will be added unto us in greater measure when we turn our thoughts less to the works and more to the embodying and indwelling Christ in our entire being. We have come to a time where there must be less talking about truth and teaching others to do so. There must be more incorporating of truth in our very flesh and bone. So, what happens then is, as we incorporate these teachings by practicing it, how do we do it? By being still if you are about to react and let God take care of it for you. Number one, that's one way. Number two is to imagine people lovingly. As mentioned, I am unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. That is the true nature of the reality of God, which again in Romans 12:2 states, good, perfect, and pleasing, as she says here. No longer fear our God, who is all good. And the individual is not separate from God. The individual arises from the sure foundation. The individual, by being still, realizes their true nature is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, and thus does what she says here. Take their attention off results. In other words, not judging by appearances, but by righteous judgment, which is Philippians 4:8, to see only the finest, to see only love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Even if the individual is persistently and stubbornly thinking of untrue, illusory thinking that suggests otherwise and thus generating those appearances. And through the practice of doing this again and again and again, mind is purified and these gifts manifest. I don't know how they will appear or what they will appear as for you, but I've spoken to many people from this channel and they shared with me fascinating stories and fascinating gifts, some of which I have never experienced myself, some of which I have experienced. All of this happens ideally automatically, as soul doership is an illusion. God does everything harmoniously, as the perfect, pleasing will of God is good. God's will is in your favor. That is what I learned from Think and Grow Rich. The autosuggestions purified the subconscious mind from the untrue, illusory, unreal beliefs to manifest infinite intelligence as the outer appearances of infinite intelligence with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say the spiritual gifts manifest ideally automatically on the journey of my blissful purpose. As I remain as I am, I flow in blissful purpose, manifesting heaven on earth with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive, appearing to transform environments, people, circumstance, and information to reflect the true nature of God as heaven on earth. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.